According to the American Psychological Association, 70% of people will experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. But here is the statistic nobody puts on a motivational poster. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that nearly 1 in 3 people unconsciously undermine their own goals right at the moment they are closest to achieving them. Not because they are lazy, not because they do not care, because something deep inside them believes they do not deserve what they are reaching for. You have been there. Maybe you are there right now. You studied for months, then stopped 2 weeks before the exam. You built something beautiful, then found a reason to walk away before anyone could see it. You got the call back, then talked yourself out of showing up. You were right there, right at the edge of something real, and you pulled back. And the worst part is, you cannot fully explain why. That is not weakness. That is not failure. That is your nervous system doing something it learned a very long time ago. So when did this start? When did you become someone who stands in their own way? Because you were not always like this. There was a version of you, younger, more open, who tried things without overthinking, who raised their hand, who said yes before fear could say no. Somewhere between that version of you and this one, something happened. Something taught you that success was not safe, and your brain believed it. Psychologist Leon Festinger introduced the concept of cognitive dissonance in 1957. The idea is simple. When your actions conflict with your beliefs, your brain creates discomfort. It pushes you to resolve that tension, not by changing your beliefs, but by changing your behavior. So if somewhere deep in your subconscious you believe you are not the kind of person who succeeds, the moment success gets close, your brain treats it like a threat. Not because you are broken, because your identity and your achievement are suddenly in conflict, and your brain will always protect identity over outcome. This is why you do not just fail, you find a way to fail. You manufacture reasons, you create drama, you get sick at the wrong moment, you pick a fight with the wrong person at the wrong time, you leave the application incomplete in your drafts folder for 6 weeks. A 2022 report from the University of California, Berkeley found that self-sabotaging behavior activates the same neural pathways as physical threat response. Your brain does not know the difference between a bear in the woods and a promotion that challenges your self-concept. It responds to both with the same instruction. Get safe, pull back, make it stop. So you do. But here's where it gets deeper, because this did not start at work. It did not start with your career. It started in a room you haven't thought about in years. Maybe you grew up in a house where success made people uncomfortable, where doing well meant you were showing off, where getting noticed brought criticism, not praise, where the tallest nail always got hammered down first. Developmental psychologist Diana Baumrin spent decades studying how early environments shaped adult behavior. Her research, later expanded by Maccabee and Martin, showed that children raised in environments where success was met with inconsistency, jealousy, or punishment learned to cap their own potential. Not consciously, automatically, like a thermostat set too low. You reach a certain temperature and something internal clicks off. You were not born afraid of success. You were taught that success came with consequences. Maybe your parent worked themselves to exhaustion and you decided somewhere in your 8-year-old mind that success destroys people. Maybe you outperformed a sibling and the house got cold for a week. Maybe the one time you were truly proud of yourself, someone cut you down so quickly that you decided being proud was dangerous. The brain of a child is not equipped to question the environment. It is only equipped to adapt to it, and so you adapted. You learned to stay small, to stay safe, to never get so high that the fall would destroy you. And now, as an adult, every time success appears on the horizon, your nervous system does not see an opportunity, it sees a height. Here's what the research actually says about this pattern, because it's more specific than most people realize. A landmark study from the University of Michigan followed 527 adults across 15 years and found that chronic self-sabotagers shared 3 distinct psychological signatures. The first was low frustration tolerance, meaning they abandoned goals the moment difficulty appeared, not because they couldn't handle difficulty, but because difficulty felt like confirmation that they were not supposed to succeed. The second was external locus of control, the deep-seated belief that outcomes are controlled by forces outside themselves. So why push? Why try? The third and most revealing was success anxiety, not fear of failure, fear of success, fear of what comes after, fear of being seen, fear of having to maintain something they don't believe they deserve. The American Institute of Stress reports that 83% of American workers experience work-related stress. But buried inside that number is a quieter statistic. A 2021 report by Deloitte found that 44% of professionals admitted to deliberately underperforming to avoid additional responsibility. Nearly half, not because they were incapable, because responsibility felt like exposure, like a spotlight on someone who does not belong in the room. You are not alone in this. You never were. So what is actually happening inside you when you self-sabotage? Neuroscientist Bessel van der Kolk, in his landmark work, described how unresolved emotional experiences do not disappear. They live in the body. They live in the automatic responses that fire before your conscious mind can intervene. By the time you realize you have just undermined yourself, the decision was already made. Not by the rational part of your brain, by the part that is still trying to protect that child who learned that shining too brightly gets you burned. Psychologist Albert Bandura called this self-efficacy, your belief in your own capacity to execute and succeed. His research across 40 years showed that self-efficacy is not fixed. It is not a personality trait you were born with or without. It is a learned response, which means it was built, and anything that was built can be rebuilt. But rebuilding requires something most people are not willing to do. It requires looking directly at the pattern without flinching, not to assign blame, not to excavate every painful memory, but to see clearly, maybe for the first time, that the behavior you thought was protecting you has been the very thing holding you back. Here is the honest truth nobody tells you about self-sabotage. It works. That is the problem. It keeps you safe. It keeps you small and known and predictable. It keeps you out of the rooms where you could fail publicly. It keeps you away from the heights where the fall looks terrifying. Every time you self-sabotage, your nervous system exhales, threat avoided. And that relief feels exactly like the right decision. Until you look up one day and realize you've been making that decision for 10 years, and the life you wanted is still waiting at the same distance it always was. A 2020 study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that people who identified and interrupted self-sabotaging patterns reported a 61% increase in goal completion within 12 months. Not because they suddenly became fearless, because they stopped mistaking fear for wisdom. Your fear is not wisdom. Your hesitation is not discernment. It is an old recording playing in a new room, and you've been listening to it like it's still relevant. So where does this leave you? If you have watched your own potential disappear around corners, if you have felt the sting of knowing you did it to yourself, if you have stood at the edge of something real and chosen to walk back, hear this clearly. You are not self-destructive. You are not cursed. You are not fundamentally broken in some way that cannot be touched. You are someone whose nervous system built a survival strategy that outlived its usefulness. And survival strategies are not character flaws. They are clever adaptations to painful circumstances. The problem is not that you built the wall. The problem is that you forgot it was a wall and started calling it a personality. Harvard's study of adult development, the longest-running study on human happiness in history, found that the single greatest predictor of a fulfilling life was not intelligence, not wealth, not talent. It was the willingness to remain open to growth, even when growth felt dangerous. You have already survived the thing that taught you to hide. You do not need to keep hiding to survive. The version of you that deserves the success you keep turning away from is not some future version. It is the version of you that is reading these words right now, still here, still trying, still wondering if maybe this time you might actually let yourself win. That version? That one already has everything it needs. Stop getting out of your own way. Start letting yourself arrive.